Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's CTMS webinar. To date, we've provided 10 CTMS webinars for free on topics such as CTMS 101, the benefits of CTMS integration, and increasing ROI through an effective CTMS training program, and others. All of our previous webinars are available for download from our website at any time at www.biopharm.com. Today, the topic is about one of the, I think, nicest but most overlooked features about having Siebel Clinical as a CTMS, and it's the ability to personalize the interface to be relevant for your specific job or function. So let me start by introducing myself. My name is Param Singh, and I am the Vice President of the Clinical Trial Management Solution Practice at BioPharm Systems. I've been working in the industry since '99 and have almost exclusively been working with Siebel Clinical during that time. Before joining BioPharm a little over 4.5 years ago, I was part of Accenture's pharma R&D consulting practice and leading Siebel CTMS implementations there as well. Overall, I've been part of more than now I think 15 or 16 implementations of Siebel Clinical. And these vary from implementations for pharmaceutical companies, contract research organizations, medical device companies, and academic institutions. And they also range from anywhere from local implementations of 30 users or so to global implementations of over 4,500 users. So each type and size of organization has its own approach to selecting and implementing that solution. So just a wide variety of different types of implementation. So now that I've introduced myself, I'd like to take just a minute to talk about my team here at BioPharm and to explain a little bit more about what we do. We provide a variety of services and products related to clinical trial management systems. We manage implementations of Siebel Clinical, whether those are custom implementations or implementations of our Siebel Clinical Accelerator, Ascend. Also, if you've seen some of our previous webinars, you know that we do extensive work with integrations in Siebel Clinical and related systems. Our approach to system implementations is very process-focused, and we also provide our process consulting services to help organizations define and harmonize their SOPs and business process across their organization with respect to clinical trial management. And we also offer comprehensive training services and products related to Siebel Clinical and our Ascend solution as well. So that's just a glimpse of some of the services and products that we offer in the space. And for more information, please feel free to contact me directly. Here's today's agenda. So you probably know that Oracle Siebel Clinical application is one of the most configurable clinical trial management systems on the market. But did you know that as an individual user, you can modify Siebel Clinical in a variety of different ways to support your specific job. So some of those key features that can be personalized include the home screen, modifying the layout to only include data types that are relevant to you. List applets. You can choose to display only the fields and columns that you need in the exact order that you need them across the application. Queries, saved queries. You can create queries within the system virtually everywhere in the application and then save them to run at a later time. And user preferences. So you can actually, there's a section within Siebel where you can choose a variety of different user preferences such as printing settings, screen tab order, managing positions and passwords, etc. So we're going to go over all of that today. So over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to explain each of these personalization features as well as demonstrate them in the system live. So I'm going to be using BioPharm's custom configuration of Siebel Clinical Ascend for the demo. While it may look different from your configuration if you have Siebel Clinical in-house, all of the features that we're going to discuss today are available in any configuration of Siebel. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few features of the platform that we're using. Right now we have everyone else on mute. So if you do have an issue, please use the chat feature on your window to bring it to our attention, and someone on our team will help resolve your issue. Also, if you have any questions that you would like me to answer at the end of the webinar during the question and answer session, please submit them in the chat function on the page at any time. So as we go through, you can submit your questions at any point, and those questions will come directly to me, and I can answer them at the end during our Q&A session. I also want to remind everybody that we are recording this presentation as well, and we're going to post it on our website afterwards. Usually within 24 hours, the recording will be available. Okay, let's get started. So like I mentioned, I'm going to explain each feature, and then we'll toggle to the application itself. And bear with me. We're going to do a lot of sort of jumping back and forth between the slides and the application. So just bear with me if we sort of lag a little bit. So we're going to focus. We're going to start by focusing on our home screen. This is, of course, the main screen that every user will land on once they log into the system. There are a series of default sections or applets that show up on the home screen, from an application perspective. But each user has the ability to modify this layout and make it very specific to what sections they would like to see and in what order. So you can use the Edit Layout button and then customize which applets are visible, which are hidden, and specify the order of each of those applets. The benefits to this modification is you can sort of decluster your home screen by putting only the most relevant pieces of information on that home screen. This places the records you need most often at your fingertips right when you log in, so it makes system navigation much easier. You don't necessarily have to use the screen tabs or the site map to access the information that you need if you modify the home screen and the applets in a particular fashion. So for demonstrating, I'm going to share my application. Here's our login screen. I'm going to log in here. We've run some demos before while using the Ready to Talk WebEx feature, and it kind of slows things down from the Internet Explorer point of view, but it should get going here. Okay, so we're on the home page. So what I want to do is you can see that the system default has a series of applets in various sections here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend I'm a site monitor who only needs to work on my sites and my trip reports. So you can see all of these various applets, programs, protocols, sites, and trip reports. And what I want to do is edit this layout to make it relevant for me. So I'm going to click on Edit Layout. and you can see that there's all the things that are visible are in blue, and some applets are hidden and they're grayed out. So what I'm going to do is hide everything except my sites, my trip reports, and the calendar. So I want to get rid of programs, get rid of analytics and protocols. And what I want to do is I want to move my trip reports to the top, so above my sites. I'll leave my alerts and I want to enable. But when I'm done, I click on Done, and my changes are now reflected. So we can see that my trip reports and my sites are what's available, and we've hidden everything else. If we go too far, so if I edit this layout and I accidentally sort of hidden more than I wanted to, and I go back and I realize that a lot of what I needed is not here anymore, I can always edit the layout and enable what I want, but I also have the option of going to, again, the system default layout. And by doing that, I'm back to where we were before. So the system, once you configure it, there's a system-wide or organizational-wide default layout that is prescribed, so you can actually go back to that very easily. Another example, if I'm sort of a clinical executive and I don't really need to see any of the detailed information, again, I can just focus on programs, and let's say that's the only thing I want to see. And again, for a clinical executive, this is really all they need to be able to see. And then once they're in here, they can actually click on the program and then navigate to the detailed information about that particular program. So again, just bringing that most relevant information to your fingertips, so to ease sort of your site navigation through the application. And all of these changes that I'm making are specific to my user. So if I were to log out and log back in, this will remain the layout that's saved for me, but I am not affecting anybody else's homepage by making these modifications. These are all user-specific changes that we're making at this level. Okay. So I'm going to go back to our slide deck, and the next thing that we're going to look at are list applets in the application. And these are very dynamic and able to be personalized per user. You can take virtually any list applet in the entire application and personalize it to see what fields you want, what columns you want, and in a specific order as well. The system, when it's deployed, again, comes with standard fields that are visible, and in most cases some fields that are hidden. So when you deploy your application, again, as system-wide, there's defaults for each list applet that, here are the 10 or 15 fields that are visible, and we have these 4 or 5 or 10 fields that are hidden. So that, is the system default, but a user can choose to alter that list applet and hide certain fields, display hidden ones, and reorder the fields as desired. And really, its main reason is to, again, make it more relevant for the job or the specific data that the user is looking to see. So this enables the user to only display the data and fields that are relevant to them, and this, of course, reduces the time for that user in searching for specific data that is needed, and in some cases will increase productivity due to increases in sort of usability. So we're gonna look at list applets in the system. And again, I'm going to share my application. So what we're going to do is we're going to we're going to act as a study manager. So for a study manager, we're going to go into our protocols screen. So here in my protocols list applet, we can see there's a series of fields that are that are visible in this list applet. And note that, so we have number of planned sites here. And when we're looking at, let's say this is the information that I'm looking for. So number of planned sites and number enrolled. Those are the things that I'm most interested in. And at this point, I can't even see which protocol each of these are. So I really don't need to see indication, dosage form, route of administration, comparative agent, etc. Those are, at this point, they're irrelevant to me. I really want to see sort of enrollment and other issues. So my primary use for this list applet is for enrollment reporting to my program manager. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click this list applet, go to this option called Columns Displayed, and what I'm going to look to see is which columns are hidden and which ones are visible. So what I want to be able to do is see first site initiated, first subject enrolled, last subject off study, last site terminated, and all of the subject numbers. I want to be able to see that. So I select all of them and I move them to the selected columns. Similarly, I'm going to look at the things that I don't need to see, like indication, dosage form. I'm going to click on products, route of administration, comparative agent, all of these things. So I'm going to move those to be hidden. And now I can look at all of the things that are visible here, and I'm going to move program to the top. And I'm going to move all of our milestones, so those first site initiated, I'm going to move that all the way to the bottom. Same with first subject and last site terminated. And I'm going to take number enrolled, and actually I'm going to remove all of these as well. And now we have all of our enrollment information together, and then I'm going to save that. Once I save it, my list applet is going to refresh, and you'll note the changes. So everything that we did, so program, protocol, title, status, etc., and then here we have all of our enrollment fields and our milestones, first subject enrolled and initiated, last subject off study, etc. So one thing that so let's say we forgot one of the fields. So I'm going to go back into columns displayed, and I really want to see products, and I forgot to bring that over. So I'm going to add products to our visible columns. Products is now added to the end, but I want it closer to the beginning of the list applet. The other way to reorder things are just to click and drag. So I can drag this to the beginning, and I'm going to drop it right between title and status. So now I have my products listing as well for each of the protocols. And again, if I want to scroll, if I double-click on one of the fields, what it's going to do is freeze that. So then when I scroll to the right and look at my enrollment numbers and enrollment and other milestones, I'm still able to see which protocol that I'm on. So that's a simple way of reordering and sort of making it relevant to what information you want to see, and sort of hiding irrelevant fields, doing the columns displayed and reordering by dragging and dropping as well. The freezing that I showed you, that doesn't stay in place. So if I navigate off the screen and come back, that actually log out, log back in, that freeze pane is not going to stay, but your order of the fields and what you've hidden and all of that is going to remain exactly the way you left it. So that's going to be saved for your user. And again, that's only affecting your specific application and your user experience with the system. So you can do that with virtually every list applet within the application. Okay, let me go back. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to look at is a feature that is used very effectively in many organizations as their answer to the need for ad hoc reports. So those of you who use Siebel know about the robust sort of querying functionality that you can filter and sort the data within a list applet in a number of different ways, simple queries, complex queries, and then so the user can specify how you filter that data and sort it. What's even more useful is the ability to save that query criteria, so you can execute these queries with a single click instead of entering the criteria every time. So what this boils down to is the ability for a user to create their own custom searches and reports. The obvious benefits of this feature are that it significantly saves time in searching for commonly needed records, and significant time savings in answering some common asked questions about CTMS data as well. So, and we'll look at some of these examples in our demo of this particular feature. Let me go back into our application. So we're gonna stick with our study manager scenario, and where we mainly use this protocol list applet to report enrollment to our, let's say, our program manager. So we're gonna set up a couple of saved queries, and the first one I'm going to do is, let's say I want a saved query for a particular program. So I'm going to query, and I'm going to query for business unit A program, and I'll hit go. So that will only show me the 3 protocols that are specific to this particular business unit or this particular program. And so since I have that already, I'm going to query and save this query. And I can call it whatever I want. I can, call it Buttons Protocols, or I can call it, Business Unit A Protocols, whatever I want to, because again, I'm saving this query for myself. So it just needs to be, relevant to me, or mean something to me. So again, if I come back in, and you can imagine if your organization has tons and tons of protocols that you work on, but you want to sort of look at only the ones for a particular program. Again, I can enter that query in, or now that I've saved it, I can just go into Saved Queries and go to Buttons Protocols, and it'll execute that query again on that list applet. So what it's doing is it's executing all of the criteria that we put in there. So you can imagine if we had, a very robust query. So let's start with this query. Let's start with Buttons Protocol, and we're going to refine it. So let's refine this. So we still have our program in here. We're going to say only active queries where we have number of planned sites greater than 5 and number of planned subjects greater than 20. So if that's the query that I want, and I can save this query as well separately. So Unit A, active, large studies. Right. So I can save that query, and again, I don't have to enter all of that criteria. So you can see that if it's 4 or 5 different fields and criteria, that this saves me a whole lot of time if I just click that and it executes my query for me. So working off sort of different examples now, let's go into regions. And I'm going to go into one of these regions and go into the site visits. So here I have a bunch of site visits, and I want to filter these by the monitor that's assigned to these visits. So right now I don't see that field, so I'm going to right-click on the list applet and look at the Assign To field, and I'm going to select that in, move it to a place where it's relevant. And now I have this Assign To field. So I can actually query this, and let's say assign to, I want to see everything that's assigned to psing. And I can save that query if I want it to. Say psing site visits. And I can do the same thing for demo or other, other users that I'm interested in. But the great thing is, again, I can filter that list for this particular protocol or this particular region, or if I go into other regions as well, it'll apply that same filter. So as I cycle through these different protocols in different regions, if I want to see everything that psing is working on or has worked on, this query is still applicable. So again, it saves me time in looking at, if I'm looking at particular work effort related to a specific monitor. And the last one that I want to show you is actually sort of a dynamic query in essence. So it has to deal with expiration of documents. So we have documents that are on this document tracking screen, every document in the entire application, and we want to see every document that is expiring in the next 30 days. So the way to do that, or either expired or expiring in the next 30 days, and the way to do that is we'll hit query, we'll go to the expiration date field, and we want to make sure that the expiration date is less than or equal to today's date plus 30. So that means that there's an expiration date that's populated, and it falls before 30 days from now, 30 days from today. So by executing this query, it's going to use my system date of April 26th for today, and it's going to execute that. And so here we have a list of documents that are expiring on May 9th. So that's between now and 30 days from now. So this query is utilizing my system date of today. But if I save this query, the great thing about this query is it's dynamic. So if I run the same query 30 days from now, it's going to use May 26th as the system date and push out the expiration date criteria 30 days from that date. So by saving this query, I have a dynamic query where it's documents expiring in 30 days. So by saving that, again, instead of entering that criteria in every time, you can understand from a clinical document associate or somebody that's working with documents, they would just come in here, let's say on a monthly basis or weekly basis, and execute this query, one click, and it gives them a whole listing of documents that are expiring in the next 30 days or 60 days or however you want to be able to set up that query. So a very valuable query, and it's dynamic enough to sort of use today's date and run that query with that criteria. Also, if these are saved queries for one particular user, but if I feel that this particular query, like this document expiring in 30 days, this is a query that is valuable for everyone within my organization, I can ask my administrator to make it public so it shows up in the drop-down option for everyone. So we're going to pretend that this has been made public, and if it's made public, you would request it of your administrator. Your administrator would go into the application administration feature and find this query and then just make it public. And you would probably, if it's called something like Bottoms query, you would obviously want to change the name of it so it's meaningful to everyone in the organization. Okay. So we're going to go back, and the next and final sort of set of features that we're going to look at today is our user preferences. So user preferences is an area of the application that is designed to give the user the ability to change various system features, defaults, and behaviors as it relates to that specific user's experience. So most companies will lock down some of these features. So you may not have access to all of these features in your specific implementation, but this is an area that can be quite useful in personalizing your experience with the Siebel system. So from this area, the first thing, a user is able to update their user account information, so they can update information such as phone, fax, email information, and even change their system password if the organization has that capability enabled. So there's ways to enable, even if you have database authentication or Active Directory authentication set up with your Siebel system, you can actually allow and enable your users to be able to change their password through the Siebel system, through this user preferences area. The next thing, a user can also determine which view they would like to start on when they log in. So as a system default, usually it's the home page that we looked at, but a user can select a different area of the applications to start in if they're only working in, let's say, payments or site management, and that's where they want to land every single time when they log in. They can choose to do that. A user can also change and update their screen and view tab order in the system. So the series of tabs that we see across the top for screens and the views that are on the bottom. Again, the system has a setup which is specific to the system defaults for all users when you deploy the system. But if you enable this particular feature, a user can actually choose to override that default. So instead of landing on the home page, they can choose a more specific, the tab order. If they have certain tabs that they never access, they can choose to hide some of them or reorder the tabs so it's a little bit more user-friendly for them. Quick Print is a feature that is very useful where it can print to HTML, whatever is visible on the screen. It's sort of a print screen feature. It's a bit better than sort of exporting to HTML, so you can obviously export from list applets into HTML or Excel, but utilizing Quick Print, it'll do that export into HTML for all applets within the view. So under this option, the user can determine the behavior of that Quick Print for themselves specifically, and we'll look at that in the demo as well. Saved queries under user preferences. So this is a subsection that allows users to rename or delete existing saved queries for that user. So if you've saved a bunch of queries and you no longer use, and then you've refined it and saved off new ones, and you're not using some of your old ones, you can actually go in here and do some cleanup. A user can't modify the criteria of that query, so you can actually, in the Save Queries section, you can see the SQL behind your query, but you can't necessarily modify the SQL. But you can at least see the SQL, and if you do need to modify it for any reason, again, you can request that from your administrator. And finally, message broadcast behavior. So, some of you are aware there's a sort of a ticker at the bottom of your Siebel screen in some cases for message broadcast, and you can, personalize the behavior of that, whether you want it to show or not, or just the speed and behavior of the messages that are going across. So those are some of the things that you can do under user preferences. There's a lot more features under user preferences. Some of them are not necessarily, useful or used often. So I'm only going over, some of the ones that we've seen users utilize in various implementations. So all of these features have an obvious benefit in that the user can control and enhance their user experience with the system. The cons to these features are, in some cases, users will have a different exposure to the application if they change a lot of things around, which can lead to, which has led to some confusion in support calls, for example. So if you've, a year ago hid some screen and view tabs by accident, and then you're now using those features, support calls become a little bit confusing as to why they don't have, those users don't have access to those screens and views. So as an organization, you need to decide how much of these particular features you want to give to your users, because there are pros and cons, of course. So looking at user preferences, let's go back to our application, and we'll look at some of the ones that we talked about. So to access user preferences, you can go under Tools, User Preferences, and it actually takes you to the User Preferences screen, where you have a bunch of links where you can modify some of this information. Again, there are a lot of different things here, but we're only going to focus on a few of them. So under Profile, this is where you can sort of update information like your mobile phone, home phone, work phone, etc. There's a bunch of fields that you can actually modify if they're actually used by your organization. And here is where you can enable a user to change their password, whether it's, again, database authentication or Active Directory. So if it's integrated with Active Directory, you can actually enable them to change their Active Directory or Windows password through here. You can also see which position you're assigned to, and also which responsibility. So if there's any question around that, there's you can't modify some of these things that are system driven, but you can certainly edit the fields around your profile. Under behavior, again, we talked about startup view. So right now it's the home page, but let's say I'm a clinical finance person and I want to go into payments every single time. So I want to go under the startup view, and in this pop-up, I'm going to look at my payments views, and I want to go under clinical payments every single time when I start up. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to log out, and we'll log back in. And this time, instead of going to the home page, we should be navigated to payments, clinical payments. So, the startup changes. So as a user, I've determined that this is where I want to land every single time that I log into the application. Going back to user preferences, I'm going to look at tab layout. So again, this is our screens and views that are defaulted for us. So you can see when I click on one of those screens, I can see all of the order of views underneath that particular screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change something very minor here. I'll change the order of programs and protocols. So I want to see programs. I want to see protocols first, and I'm going to make that the default view. And let's see. I'll hide the clinical. Sorry, this one. I'll hide the clinical programs view under administration. So just by doing that and saving it, I can. I might need to log out and log back in. So now I go under clinical administration, and again I see the protocols list first before all of the other ones. So we changed that order. Not sure why this didn't hide it, but this should have actually been hidden. I think it works differently with the actual links underneath instead of sort of the view tabs themselves. Underneath a particular screen, like when we see actual view tabs here, we can actually hide those versus hiding some of the links in this section. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is look at the printing. So for the printing, I'm going to show you what happens right now when we print, hit the quick print option. So going under protocols, and let's go under documents, because I know there's some protocol here. So we have a bunch of documents down here, and if I hit quick print, all it's going to do as a default is just print off the single record that is being highlighted for that document. And that's the default for our quick print option. It's only going to, whatever is highlighted is what's going to be printed. So we want to change that. So we go back to user preferences, and we go under printing, and we're going to select, so you have all applets in a view or the selected applet only. So if we do the selected applet only, it will print off potentially all of the list of documents, but only for that applet that you have focus on. If we do all applets in view, it's actually going to do a print screen of whatever you see on the screen. So both applets, or if there's, like in trip reports, we have 3 or 4 or 5 different applets. So doing a quick print there will actually print off all of the applets. So that's what we want. That's the behavior that we want. We're going to print individual lists using HTML. And the rows to print, again, either the active row or all rows in the current query. Active row doesn't really give us much to work with, so we want to do all rows in the current query. And columns to print, we can do all or visible. All, of course, will print off everything, even the hidden columns. But what we really want to do is give the user the ability to, again, run sort of ad hoc reporting capabilities through this feature. So we're going to say visible columns. We'll save that, and I'm going to go back into my protocol, go back to document tracking, and here, let's say you can run the query first. So let's do a query on. Let's just run it just as is. So I'm going to hit quick print this time. And you'll notice that not only did it print off, all of the documents in this listing or in that query, but it also gave us this higher level sort of protocol information as well. So the top applet. So now we know which protocol these documents belong to, and it's giving me, sort of everything in that current query. Again, I can query this list and say, let's say we only want medical licenses, because I see a couple of those. So there's 3 medical licenses, and you know what? I want to modify this list so I'm only looking at certain fields that are appropriate. So all I want to see is approved date and expiration date. And I'll save that. And now that I have this listing and with these fields, if I hit quick print, again, it's going to only take into account what columns are visible and what records are in the current query. So you can see how this can quickly become a very useful tool for ad hoc reporting. So you're asking the question of, let's say what documents are expiring in the next 30 days, for example, for each particular protocol. Once you run that query, and if you have that query saved, you run that query, you run a quick print, and you have a quick, very, very quick report that you can save off as HTML, and then email it to whoever's looking for that data if they don't have access to the application. So the quick print feature is very, very useful in sort of bringing that information out of the system. So of course, you can export this list into HTML or Excel, but again, this high-level information up here is not going to be in that export. So the quick print option allows you to keep all of that relevant data together, so you can see that, okay, these 20 documents that I exported belong to this particular protocol, this particular program, etc. It's a very useful feature. Go to the next thing. I know we have a few more minutes, so I'm going to try to cover off the next 2 very quickly. Saved queries. So here are all of our saved queries, and you can see the ones that we created today. So piecing site visits, documents expiring in the next 30 days, and you can see the query criteria where clinical trip report, the owned by is like piecing. So you can see the sort of SQL that it's building based on what we've added in the application in terms of when we query the list applet. Same thing here, where number of sites planned is greater than 5, number of planned subjects is greater than 20. So you can see all of that. I can change the name of the queries, and these are all of my queries. They're not the ones that are made public, of course. So I can change the name of them at this point, and I can delete them as well. So if I wanted to delete, I can delete that saved query, and it's no longer going to show up. So this is sort of just management of your own personal saved queries. Anything that's public is going to be something that the administrator of your system is going to take care of. And the last thing, and again, we've seen it used in some cases, not very, very extensively, but the message broadcasting ticker, which is this black bar down here, currently there's no messages going through, but you can as a user define the speed of those messages and the arrow scroll speed. So when you click on the arrow, does it go faster or slower? And then mouse over. If you mouse over the bar, do you want it to stop, or do you want it to go faster, etc.? So there's just some minor things that you can do. I can choose to not have it displayed as well. Again, minor things that users can do to sort of change the behavior of that particular feature. Okay, so that's really all that we have time to cover for today. There are other features that enable you to sort of personalize the system, but you know, that's all we had time for today to sort of cover off. But it's worth looking at sort of user preferences and other areas and how you know, the user can sort of modify their or enhance their experience with the system. So Siebel Clinical is highly configurable. Again, even for individual users, home screen and list applets can be modified to show most relevant data and in the order that's most useful for you and your user and your function. Queries and ad hoc reports can be saved, rerun, shared with others. That's a very, very powerful feature of Siebel Clinical. And if you utilize that to its fullest potential, you actually reduce the need for, you know, creating developing actual ad hoc reports in BI Publish or you know, Crystal reports or your other any other sort of reporting engine. And then again, user preferences are things that allow the user to modify their settings for various system defaults in the system. And you know, investing a few minutes in making these modifications as you go along really, you know, help you personalize your experience with Siebel Clinical. So that brings us to the end, to the question and answer portion of the webinar. So if you have a question, please submit it through the chat function, and I'll do my best to try to answer it. So let me go through and look at some of the questions that have been submitted. Is the default layout specific to a specific trial or program or across the whole organization? The default layout of you know, list applets or screen tabs, etc., that's going to be across the whole organization. You know, there are certain things that are role specific. So, for example, you know, I as a CRA may not see all of the screens and views that a clinical administrator may see. So, in that sense, you know, there's role-based, you know, access and layout that's relevant. But you know, if we talk about list applets, there's a default layout that's going to be across the entire organization. And you know, so if you know, the next question was, can you have a default layout for a specific trial? I don't believe you can do that, or you can't do it very easily. I'm sure there's probably ways to create multiple list applets that sort of toggle based on the type of trial it is, but you'll have to do some very fancy configuration and scripting to allow that to happen. The question was, how do I add a protocol to my protocol? So when we looked at the system, there was a my protocols you know, list applet that we were looking at. That's controlled by team access. So if you're added to the team for that particular protocol is when that protocol will show up under the My Protocols list applet for you. So you know, your organization may be running dozens of trials, and you're only part of the team on 3 of them. So when you go into that area under protocols, you'll only see those 3 that you have access to. So that's controlled by the security. Can you have multiple instances of an applet with different configurations? You show the protocol applet. I would like a protocol applet for status and then one for study information. Again, I think that's a similar question to earlier, where you can have potentially different applets where, you know, it's called sort of toggling. But so one piece of real estate on a view, there could be multiple applets that sort of occupy that real estate, and you toggle back and forth either automatically or, you know, a user can choose to toggle back and forth between the 2 different applets. But they are essentially 2 different applets that you configure, and you have to build in the rules of when one shows up versus the other. So if there are definable rules where, you know, you can say if a protocol is of type A, you know, show this applet. If it's a protocol of type B, then show the other applet. You can actually do that where you can define, definite rules for that, but it is sort of additional configuration that you'll need to do, and you'll have to maintain and manage both of those applets. Question, is there a way to change or set user preferences, views, and layouts in mass, for example, a particular department or group? Unfortunately, no. One of the things that we wanted to do for several of our organizations was default the printing options across the board, and unfortunately, those are tied to the user. So there's no easy way to do that systematically across in mass, specifically to like printing and other things. But I'm sure you can do things, where with either scripting or from the back end to enable that to happen. But it's not recommended to do it in that fashion. It's more, again, tied to each individual user and their experience. But like I said, the system can be deployed with certain defaults that are across the board. So like screen tab, view, order, and layout, and list applet layout. All that stuff is done on a system-wide basis, and the user preferences are just there to sort of override that in some cases where it may be relevant. Is there a way to make the text bigger or smaller in the interface? I don't know unless you change. You can change the when we're presenting and they want to make the text bigger. The only thing that we were able to do is change the resolution of the screen, and that'll make the actual screen bigger. I think maybe if you can potentially use the inherent sort of functionality within IE Explorer to increase text size. I'm not sure if it'll take effect, but that's something that you may be able to utilize. Can other users see a broadcast message you sent? Yes. So broadcast messages, on that bottom ticker, they're managed through sort of communication administration or messaging administration, where you can create messages. The administrator can create messages that will be visible to either all users, a single user, or a group of users. So if there's a message that you want to get out to a particular team, you can utilize that feature so they can see a message sort of scrolling, and you can set start and end times and dates on those messages. So if you want a particular message to run for 7 days, to a particular set of users, the administrator can do that. We have a set of questions here. For the homepage section, have you found an ideal number of fields for users so that it may not be overwhelming? Yeah, so for the list applets on the homepage, you try to limit it to very high-level information. So yeah, I mean, a handful of fields is going to be ideal. And then if they need to get detailed information about that, they would click on the hyperlinks, for like say site number or protocol number, and then they'll go to those detailed areas to see all the other information that's available at that view. So the homepage is really designed to sort of just to help with navigation and bring things to the forefront of things that need that user's particular attention. So for example, we built a My Trip Reports applet, which brings to the homepage any trip report that has some sort of action required of it. So either it's in progress, or it's submitted, or it's rejected. So it and it's assigned to that person that's logged in. So there's some action that's required of them. So that's usually what we use the homepage for. For saved queries, do you know where a list of available Boolean search terms can be found? In the bookshelf, there are a series of, under queries, today I use the today function, today, open paren, close paren. So there's a series of other sort of tips and tricks that are in bookshelf of how you do, greater than, less than, as well as, is null, is not null, things like that. So there's a list of things on the bookshelf under use of the system. You could also probably find it in the help feature directly in the application. So if you go to help, some of those things are listed there as well. Next question, for the saved queries created by the administrator, does it matter for the public saved queries if a user has restricted the viewable fields by the list feature, whereby a query field is used that is limited by the list feature? Okay, I think I understand the question. So if the list applet doesn't have the field visible or available of which your saved query is going to be querying on, will that saved query still run? And the answer is yes. So the saved query does run on those filtered records, even if that field, let's say expiration date, is what the saved query is running off of, but that field has either been hidden or sort of removed from that applet. The saved query will still run. So that's not it's not limited by what fields are available in that list applet. Next question. We only have a couple more questions. Can the report be emailed as well other than printing? Yes. So the reports in the application. So for the quick print, if you're printing it that way, it actually generates an HTML file, which you can then choose to print, or you can actually save as an HTML file. And so if so you can actually send that HTML file to anyone via email, and they can actually open that HTML file, obviously in Internet Explorer, but you can also edit it before sending it out in the email. So we've had situations where they take the quick print, which is very sort of basic, right? And then they open that HTML file that they saved in Microsoft Word. They can add their company's logo and other sort of formatting things to it, and save it again as an HTML file, and then email it out to whoever they want to send that report to. So there's an intermediate step if you want to modify the format and enhance sort of the look and feel of the report before you email it out. Okay, that was the last question. So if you do have any other questions around this webinar or any other questions around Siebel Clinical, please feel free to email me. My contact information is on this slide. And in closing, I want to thank everyone for spending the last hour or so with us on this particular webinar. And again, like I said, this webinar will be posted. It has been recorded, so it will be posted on our website within 24 hours. So if your colleagues have missed it, you can point them in that direction as well. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and look forward to speaking with you next time. Our next webinar is going to be in 2 months, and so please look for the reminders and emails for that. You can see the schedules of all of our webinars, including our webinars in our other practices as well, on our website. And with that, I'll thank you again and have a great day.
Thank you. Please stand by.